The sky had been holding its breath all morning. Gray clouds stretched across the horizon, heavy and low, as if the world itself was waiting for something to break. Emma sat on her porch, a mug of tea warming her hands, but it did little to ease the chill in her heart. She watched the branches of the old oak trees sway, imagining them bending under a storm that hadn't yet arrived. For weeks, she had been feeling that same weight, quiet, almost invisible to others, yet impossible to ignore. Life in her small town had a rhythm, predictable and comforting to most, but Emma often felt like an outsider looking in. Friends had moved on, her family lived in another state, and her days passed in a soft gray blur of routines and fleeting conversations. She was 32, with eyes that held a depth she rarely showed, and a smile that people often complimented without knowing it carried a hint of longing. Emma longed for something she couldn't quite name: a connection, a spark, a reason to feel fully alive in a world that sometimes felt too quiet. Yet she had learned to mask it, smiling politely, nodding in conversations, hiding the quiet ache that lingered just beneath her calm exterior. The wind picked up, sending a swirl of dust and fallen leaves across the empty street. Emma shivered, pulling her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. She loved moments like this, the way the world seemed to pause, as if holding its breath alongside her. But there was also a loneliness in it, one that wrapped around her like the evening chill. Across the street, in a small studio with a single street lamp flickering outside, Liam was setting up his easel. He had noticed Emma from the moment she stepped onto her porch that morning. There was something in the way she held herself, quiet yet watchful, that drew him in. He wasn't used to noticing neighbors in any meaningful way. Life had a way of keeping people at arm's length, but there was something about her, subtle and unspoken, that made him pause. Liam had his own quiet weight. At 35, he had spent years pouring himself into art, painting landscapes and city streets, yet feeling that something vital was always missing. The storm clouds above mirrored the unsettled feeling he carried, a yearning he couldn't name, a longing for connection as real as the rain that promised to fall. Emma sipped her tea again, her thoughts wandering to memories she rarely allowed herself to revisit. The summers of her childhood spent chasing storms with her brother, the gentle comfort of her mother's voice as lightning flickered across the sky. Those memories were bittersweet, reminders of laughter long gone and bonds that had faded with time. Now, as the wind teased the edges of her hair and the first drops of rain began to fall, she felt that familiar mix of nostalgia and hope stir in her chest. The first lightning streaked across the sky, distant but brilliant, illuminating the empty street for a brief moment. Emma's breath caught, not in fear, but in recognition of something bigger than herself. Storms always reminded her of possibilities, the way they could sweep away what was stagnant and reveal something new, something unexpected. She had no idea that today this storm would do just that. From his studio, Liam peered out the window at the first drops of rain beginning to fall. He watched Emma standing there, small yet defiant, against the growing wind. Something about her presence felt familiar, almost as if he had been waiting for this moment without realizing it. He grabbed a large canvas tarp, thinking instinctively to offer help. There was no conscious thought, only a sense that he needed to act. To reach across the distance that separated them, the air grew thick with electricity, the smell of wet earth rising as the storm approached. Emma noticed the wind tug at her hair, the rain starting to soak through her cardigan, and instinctively took a step forward, toward the street, toward something she couldn't yet name. Then suddenly a shadow moved across her vision. Liam emerged from his studio doorway, tarp in hand, and their eyes met. There was a moment, a heartbeat of recognition, of possibility, before the world around them seemed to fall away into the soft drum of rain. Neither of them spoke, yet a quiet understanding passed between them. Something was about to begin. Emma felt a small thrill of anticipation, a sensation she hadn't allowed herself in years. The storm was coming, not just in the sky above, but in her life, in a way that promised change. And in that fleeting electric moment, she sensed that she was no longer alone, though neither of them could yet know what awaited them in the rain. The storm would not just wash the streets. Clean it would wash something new into their lives. The rain had grown steadier now, tapping a soft rhythm on the roofs and sidewalks. Emma and Liam stood under the canvas tarp, the sudden closeness of their small shared shelter making her feel both nervous and strangely comforted. Neither of them spoke at first. Words seemed unnecessary. The sound of rain, the warmth of the tarp, and the quiet presence of another human being was enough. Emma's mind wandered back to childhood storms, ones she had once chased barefoot across sun-warmed grass. She remembered the smell of wet earth and the sound of her brother's laughter echoing across the yard, the feel of her mother's hand steadying hers when lightning split the sky. Those memories carried a sweetness that was tinged with sorrow now, a reminder that some things are gone and cannot be recaptured. And yet, in this moment with Liam, that nostalgia felt alive again, like it had found a new shape. Liam, too, had memories rising unbidden. He thought of summers spent alone with his sketchbooks, capturing fleeting moments, clouds rolling over hills, children playing in the streets, couples walking quietly together. He had often painted from a distance, capturing emotions he could feel but had rarely experienced firsthand. Seeing Emma now, wet hair plastered softly to her forehead, cheeks flushed from the rain, he recognized a spark that felt familiar yet new. It was as if some part of him had always been waiting for this encounter. But fear and past disappointments had kept him at bay. They began to talk, their voices low, almost in sync with the rhythm of the rain. "I used to love storms when I was little," Emma said, her eyes tracing the rivulets of water sliding down the tarp. There was something about how the world changed, how everything felt alive and loud, even when it was just me and my thoughts. Liam nodded. "I know what you mean. I spent so many summers drawing the clouds, watching storms come and go. There's a kind of honesty to them. They don't hide anything." Shh. Emma smiled softly. "It's funny. We grow up thinking we're supposed to have everything figured out. But moments like this, they remind you that maybe it's okay to just feel without knowing why." For a few quiet minutes, they just listened to the rain. It wasn't heavy or frightening, just steady, comforting, and full of possibility. Yet beneath that calm, there was a subtle awareness of their own vulnerabilities, the echoes of past heartbreaks, of friendships that had drifted away, of love that had never fully taken root. Emma's thoughts drifted to the last time she had truly trusted someone with her heart. It had ended quietly, with no dramatic confrontation, only the slow fading of connection. She had told herself she was strong, that she could move on. Yet a quiet part of her longed for something real, again a bond that went beyond polite smiles and casual conversation. And now, standing here with Liam, that part of her stirred. Liam, too, carried invisible scars. He had once allowed himself to care deeply, only to be left with silence where promises had been made. Painting had been his refuge, but it was never the same as the warmth of someone who truly understood him. Emma's presence brought back that longing, not with desperation, but with hope. It was a gentle reminder that perhaps the right connection could arrive unexpectedly. Like a summer storm, there was something unspoken in their shared glances. The way their hands brushed occasionally while adjusting the tarp, or the way their laughter mingled effortlessly. It was a delicate bond, one that felt natural and easy, yet profound. They weren't trying to impress each other. They were simply allowing themselves to be present, letting past hurts fade into the background for just a little while. Emma found herself sharing small stories she had never told anyone. The summer she had rescued a lost kitten from a flooded alley. The time she had built a treehouse with her brother only for it to collapse in the middle of a storm. Each anecdote was ordinary, yet in the telling, it felt intimate. Like layers of her heart were being unfolded without fear of judgment. Liam listened with quiet attention, asking gentle questions, his eyes reflecting curiosity and kindness. In turn, Liam shared memories of his own, sketching on park benches in the sweltering sun, learning to paint skies that mirrored his moods. Quiet nights spent staring at distant stars and wondering if someone, somewhere, was feeling the same things he was. Emma listened intently, captivated not only by his words but by the sincerity behind them. She sensed that he, too, had been waiting for someone with whom he could simply exist without pretense. The storm around them softened, the rain falling in lighter, rhythmic drops. And yet Emma and Liam remained under the tarp, reluctant to leave the fragile cocoon of connection they had found. The streets were nearly empty now, and the world beyond the shelter seemed distant, less urgent. Here, in the quiet hum of rain, they had discovered something rarer: shared understanding. A quiet recognition of hearts that had been waiting for a gentle spark. But even as they lingered, there was a subtle hesitancy. Both had PA. The following week arrived with unexpected warmth. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the town in shades of gold. Yet the memory of the storm still lingered in the street sputtles, reflected the sky like tiny mirrors. And the air carried a freshness that only rain could leave behind. Emma walked slowly down the familiar sidewalk, letting her thoughts drift to the man across the street. His presence had stirred something within her. She wasn't sure what to call it yet: hope, curiosity, or a quiet spark of connection, but it was enough to make her heart lift slightly each time she thought of him. Liam had been in the studio the last few days, busy with commissions and his own work, and they hadn't spoken since that afternoon under the tarp. Yet Emma felt certain that the encounter was not the end, was the beginning of something that had been quietly waiting for the right moment to emerge. As she passed the corner where the oak tree swayed in the gentle breeze, she spotted something that made her pause. A small paper flyer caught between the branches of the low-hanging branches fluttered like a delicate butterfly. Curious, she bent down and picked it up. It was an announcement for a small summer art exhibit, featuring local artists, and there, almost at the bottom, was Liam's name. Emma's chest tightened. Of course it would be him. Somehow, fate had orchestrated another meeting, another chance. She tucked the flyer into her pocket, a quiet thrill rushing through her. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the streets glimmered with the golden reflection of the fading light, Emma found herself walking past Liam's studio once again. And there he was, adjusting the canvas of a new painting, completely absorbed in his work. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure whether to call out, to interrupt, or simply walk by as if nothing had changed. But then their eyes met. Liam paused, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. It was not a smile of pretense or casual politeness. Was a recognition, a quiet acknowledgement that the connection between them had not been forgotten. "Emma," he said softly, setting down his brush. The sound of her name in his voice made her pulse quicken, not with panic, but with something warmer, gentler, something like belonging. "Hi, Liam," she replied, a smile finding her despite her own nervousness. "I saw your name on the exhibit flyer." "That's exciting," he nodded, brushing his hands against his jeans as though to shake off the tension. "Yeah, it's a small exhibit, but I'm hoping it'll be meaningful." His eyes lingered on hers for a moment longer than necessary, and she felt the same quiet thrill she had felt under the tarp during the storm. They stepped outside together, walking along the sidewalk as the evening air cooled. Neither spoke for a few moments, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was charged, full of all the words that had gone unsaid in the past days and the weeks before. "I've been thinking about that day," Emma said finally, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "The storm, I don't think I've ever felt anything like it before. It was strange, but in a good way." Liam smiled, his eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "Me too. It was like the rain washed everything away, my worries, my doubts, even my fear of being wrong about people. For some reason, I felt like I could be myself around you. And that's not something I feel often." Emma felt a flutter in her chest. A quiet joy mingled with the old hesitations she still carried. "I felt that too. It's rare, isn't it? To meet someone and feel like maybe they understand parts of you you didn't even know were waiting. Rare, Liam agreed. But maybe rare is exactly what makes it worth noticing. They walked past the quiet streets, their conversation weaving seamlessly between art, memories, and small discoveries about each other. A fallen branch from the storm lay across the path, and Liam knelt to move it aside. "I guess the storm still wants to remind us it was here," he said lightly, and Emma laughed. The sound felt like sunlight breaking through clouds she hadn't realized were still lingering as the evening deepened. A small coincidence brought them even closer. A neighbor's cat, wet from the remnants of the storm, darted across the street and froze in front of Emma and Liam. It mewed softly, looking at them with pleading eyes. Without thinking, Emma knelt to pick up the trembling creature, and Liam reached out instinctively, steadying her as she cradled it. The shared action, simple and unremarkable to an outsider, felt monumental to them. Their hands brushed lightly, fingers lingering just a fraction longer than necessary. And in that fleeting contact, the unspoken bond between them deepened. There was no rush, no pressure, just the warmth of shared humanity, of concern, and of mutual understanding. "You have a way of finding the little miracles in ordinary days," Liam said softly, eyes fixed on hers. Emma's smile widened, warmth spreading through her chest. "Maybe they're not miracles. Maybe we just don't notice them enough until someone else reminds us to see." They continued walking, side by side, the streets now quiet, the air heavy with the promise of summer evenings yet to come. Each step felt like a soft echo of the storm that had started it all, a gentle reminder that the past could meet the present in unexpected ways, and that sometimes fate, chance, or the smallest event could reignite feelings long held at bay. By the time they parted that evening, Emma felt lighter than she had in years. Liam's parting glance was not hurried, not casual. It carried the same quiet promise she felt in her own heart, that this was only the beginning, that the threads connecting them were being woven deliberately, yet invisibly, by something neither of them fully understood. As she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she realized that the storm had not just been weather, it had been a signal, a turning point. And now, in the present, that signal was echoing once more, bringing them closer to something neither time nor fear could erase. The days that followed the storm passed in a quiet, almost surreal rhythm. Emma and Liam found themselves thinking of each other more than either expected, not with urgency or obsession, but with a soft pull of curiosity and recognition, an invisible thread tugging at their hearts. Yet, neither spoke aloud the thoughts that lingered just beneath the surface. Emma sat on her favorite bench in the small town park, the sun warming her shoulders, yet she felt a slight chill in her chest. She had replayed their walks, their small shared moments, countless times in her mind. Every glance Liam had given her, every soft smile, every pause before a word was spoken, she held them all with a tender reverence. And yet a question lingered unspoken. What does he feel? She thought of the past, the quiet heartbreaks that had made her cautious, the moments when trust had been fragile and easily broken. Part of her wanted to speak, to admit the subtle stirrings in her heart, but another part recoiled. Vulnerability was terrifying. And yet that fear made the quiet moments she had spent with Liam even more precious. Each laugh, each shared observation, a treasure she could cling to safely, without risking disappointment. Across town, Liam was in his studio, staring at a nearly finished painting of a stormy summer sky. It was not unlike the one that had brought them together, yet somehow different, softer, more reflective. He had tried to capture the feeling he could not yet name, the tension of longing, the hesitation of hearts not yet brave enough to speak. His brush moved slowly, deliberately, as if each stroke could reveal a truth he couldn't voice aloud. He thought of Emma constantly, not in a way that was pressing or demanding, but in quiet, thoughtful moments, when he poured coffee in the morning, when he adjusted his canvas, when the wind rustled the papers in his studio. Her laughter, her soft observations about the world, The way she seemed to notice small, beautiful things others overlooked, they stayed with him. And yet a hesitation lingered, born of old fears, past disappointments, and the unspoken question, what if I misread her? What if it's only me feeling this way? One evening, fate brought them together again, as ordinary days often do, for those connected by an invisible thread. Liam was walking along the narrow boardwalk that ran along the edge of the river, carrying his sketchbook. Emma appeared from the opposite direction, her coat slightly damp from a passing summer drizzle. They smiled a small, knowing smile-land for a moment. Neither moved forward. The pause was filled with all that remained unspoken. Words hovered at the edges, a delicate tension of hope and uncertainty. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice soft, tentative, yet carrying a subtle warmth. I keep thinking about the storm, she said, looking at the rippling water. About how unexpected things can happen. How someone can enter your life and shift everything without warning. Liam's eyes met hers, and he nodded slowly. I know exactly what you mean. I keep replaying that day, wondering if it was just coincidence or something more. Something we're meant to notice. Emma's fingers tightened around her coat lapel, a gesture almost unnoticed but full of meaning. I think it was more than coincidence, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel like that day wasn't just about the storm. It was about meeting someone I was meant to see differently. Liam's chest tightened. He wanted to say everything he felt, to confess the quiet swell of hope and longing that had grown since that day. But words failed him. He knew that speaking too soon, too forcefully, could shatter the fragile connection they had carefully built over days and shared moments. Instead, he nodded, letting his expression convey what his words could. The week that followed their quiet evening by the river was unusually warm, the air heavy with the scent of blooming flowers and sun-warmed earth. Yet, despite the beauty around her, Emma felt a restless tension she could not shake. Each time she thought of Liam, her chest tightened with anticipation. And yet, there was always that hesitation, a question she could not answer. Should I risk revealing what I feel? Liam, meanwhile, had been battling the same internal storm. He painted furiously in his studio, colors blending in ways he could not fully control, each stroke reflecting the emotions he had tried so long to ignore. He had felt the pull between them since the day of the storm, growing steadily with each smile, each shared conversation. And now it felt unbearable to remain silent. Something had to give. Ether, he would speak, or the tension would become too heavy to bear. Fate intervened in the most ordinary of ways. A sudden summer shower broke out just as Emma stepped out of her apartment, forcing her to seek cover under a narrow awning. She frowned, wishing she had remembered an umbrella, when she heard the familiar sound of hurried footsteps approaching. Liam emerged from the rain, drenched but smiling, holding a spare scarf and a small, folded tarp in his hands. "You're soaked," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that made Emma's chest flutter. "Come under this until it stops." The rain fell harder, drumming a rhythmic melody on the rooftops and streets around them. They huddled together under the makeshift cover, the small space feeling both intimate and comforting. For a moment, neither spoke. Instead, they listened to the storm, letting it fill the spaces where words had previously faltered. Finally, Liam drew a deep breath, and the quiet determination in his eyes made Emma's heart skip. "Emma," he said, his voice low but steady, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago." Emma turned to face him fully, her hands gripping the edge of the tarp. "What is it?" she asked softly, her own pulse quickening. He hesitated, as though gathering every ounce of courage he had stored, then spoke with clarity. "From the moment I saw you in that storm, I felt something I didn't understand at first. But now I realize it's more than just a passing feeling. I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in a long time." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and electric. Emma's breath caught, a mixture of relief, joy, and a quiet fear that the moment would vanish before it fully existed. "Liam, I've felt the same way," she admitted, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "I've been afraid to say it because because I wasn't sure if it was real. But hearing you say it, it makes all the hesitation worth it." For a brief moment, time seemed to pause. The rain continued its gentle drum, the streets around them blurred into a soft haze, and the world felt suspended. Their hands brushed instinctively as they held the tarp. And for the first time, the emotional tension that had bound them so tightly began to release. It was not a rush of drama, but a slow, steady acknowledgement of something genuine, lasting, and real. Liam's smile widened, relief and hope mingling in his expression. "I was afraid to," he confessed. "Afraid that if I spoke, I'd ruin what we had. Or worse, that you wouldn't feel the same. But now that we've said it, it feels lighter, somehow, like the storm was preparing us for this moment." Emma laughed softly, a sound that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. "It does," she agreed. "It's strange how the rain, the storm, it all led us here. I never thought a storm could bring something so." Right? They stood together under the awning, listening to the rain, feeling the quiet power of the moment. Their bond, once unspoken and tentative, had finally found voice. And though the storm outside had begun to ease, the emotional turning point between them was far from over. It was only beginning. "Liam," Emma said, her eyes glistening, "I want to see where this goes. I want to trust it. I want us." His hand found hers, a simple gesture that carried more meaning than words ever could. "Us," he echoed, and the single word felt like a promise. The rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, the streets glimmering with the soft reflection of lights. As they finally walked together, side by side, neither felt the fear that had haunted them before. The turning point had arrived not in a grand declaration, but in the quiet, brave act of speaking their truth. And in that honesty, they had discovered something rare, the start of a connection built on courage, trust, and genuine feeling. By the time they reached the corner of their neighborhood, the last drops of rain had faded, leaving the world calm and refreshed. And though the summer was still young, both Emma and Liam knew that their hearts had weathered the storm together. From now on, nothing could silence the truth they had finally spoken aloud. The summer had stretched into its later weeks. Golden and warm, yet tinged with the quiet melancholy of days slowly passing. Emma and Liam had spent those weeks together in subtle, unhurried ways, walking through sunlit streets, visiting the local bookstore to compare favorite novels, sketching in the park, and sharing quiet dinners where conversation flowed effortlessly. Each moment was gentle, unassuming, yet it built a foundation that neither could ignore. It was a Saturday afternoon when Emma arrived at Liam's studio, the sunlight spilling through the windows in long beams that danced across unfinished canvases. Liam looked up from his painting, smiling as he saw her standing in the doorway. In that instant, the weeks of hesitation, quiet longing, and unspoken emotion felt like they had melted away. "I thought we could go to the river," Liam said, setting down his brush. "The sun's perfect for a walk, and I think it's been too long since we just walked and talked." Emma smiled, a warmth in her chest that had become familiar these past days. "I'd like that," she replied. "It feels like we've been waiting for this summer, too. Catch up with us." As they strolled along the winding river path, the gentle sound of water lapping against the banks mirrored the calm that had settled over both of them. They didn't rush. They didn't feel the need to fill every moment with words. Instead, they simply shared each other's presence, comfortable in the quiet intimacy that comes from understanding and trust. The conversation drifted naturally, touching on small memories, favorite paintings, and hopes for the future. Liam spoke about an idea for a new exhibit he wanted to create, inspired by the summer storms that had changed his perspective on life. Emma shared stories of her childhood, her laughter carrying easily over the soft rustle of the riverbank leaves. And yet, beneath the easy conversation, there was a deeper, unspoken acknowledgments, recognition that something rare had taken root between them. It wasn't a sudden, overwhelming love, but a quiet, steady bond that had grown stronger with each shared smile, each moment of vulnerability, each gentle act of kindness. At a small bend in the river, they paused. Liam leaned against the railing, gazing at the water, then turned toward Emma. "Do you ever think about how a storm can change everything?" he asked softly, a smile playing on his lips. Emma nodded, her eyes reflecting the sunlight and the gentle hope she felt. "All the time," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like the world gives us a chance in the most unexpected ways to see what really matters, and who really matters." Liam's expression softened. "And did you know that storm? The one that brought us together. I think it taught me something. That the things we're afraid of, the moments we hesitate in, sometimes lead to the best things if we're brave enough to let them happen." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I've learned that too," she said. "It's strange, isn't it? How fear and hope can exist side by side, and yet the one we choose to listen to can change everything." They stood there for a long moment, the river flowing quietly beside them, the summer sun casting golden reflections across the water. Neither needed to speak further. The understanding between them was complete. They had faced hesitation, acknowledged their fears, and yet had chosen to trust each other, to allow the bond they had built to grow naturally. Finally, Liam reached out and took Emma's hand. Not as a gesture of urgency, but as a quiet, steady promise. She felt the warmth of his hand, a gentle reassurance that spoke more than words ever could. "I think," he said softly, "that this, us, is exactly what I've been hoping for, even if I didn't know it until now." Emma's eyes glistened with unspoken emotion. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "It's everything I've been waiting for, in a way I didn't even realize I needed." The afternoon stretched into evening, the sky painted in hues of soft pink and lavender. They walked slowly, talking less now and simply existing side by side. The quiet comfort between them more powerful than any words could be. Each step, each shared glance was a reaffirmation of the connection they had nurtured through hesitation, understanding, and quiet courage. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a gentle twilight, Emma and Liam paused at the river's edge. The last light shimmered across the water, and in that moment everything felt resolved. There were no doubts, no fears pressing in, only a calm, radiant certainty that they had found something rare and beautiful, a bond built not on impulse or grand gestures, but on trust, honesty, and the patient unfolding of two hearts willing to meet each other halfway. "I think storms," Liam said quietly, breaking the silence, "aren't just endings. They're beginnings, and this is ours." Emma squeezed his hand gently, a soft smile.